Hey guys, it's Friday, the end of the week. We've made it, guys. It is Friday. We're going to go straight into our mastery review session in silence and on your own. We are literally all on our own in lockdown. So really the distraction of your peers is no longer an issue. But I do appreciate there might be distractions around you, TV on, other people. So actually just get yourselves ready. Okay, so kind of speak like in a calm, meditative voice. So what do we need to do, guys? We need to get paper and pen, or we need to be ready with a Word document open. I've been working in support school on a Thursday, and people are pretty nifty at kind of getting the video up on one side of the screen, being able to have a Word document on the other. But some people also think they're being pretty crafty and they're not listening to the videos. They're just working through the PDF slides, or they're skipping bits of the videos. Now, guys, it's great as it is to, speak to myself for half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, however long these videos take, whilst looking at myself awkwardly in a webcam. Believe me, there really is a benefit for you in these videos. And that is that there will be information, ideas, exposition, in other words, teaching that you won't get from the PDF. So please be ready to listen, to watch the whole video and to respond as we go. So anyway, let's get a pen and paper ready. Let's put on today's date, which is Friday of January 2021. And our title, I know it comes up in a minute, is The Importance of Theme. But guys, ready to be that kind of revision in silence and you're on your own. So guys, let's have a look at number 1 together. And as if by magic, number 1. Okay, look at this sentence. Circle the verbs and decide whether it is past, present or future tense. We will be looking at a variety of poems. Number 2. Fix the verb tense problem in this sentence. So we've been looking at verbs. Now, one of the biggest problems we can sometimes make is the wrong verb. There can be a verb tense, what we call disagreement. Tense and verbs need to agree. So what's wrong with this sentence? You need to find the problem and rewrite the sentence to fix it. Yesterday, he is reading a poem. So how would you fix that verb tense problem in that sentence? Number 3, look at this sentence. Just for this one, you're going to tell me, is it a statement, exclamation, command, or question? Take care when writing your answers. So is that a statement, an exclamation, a command, or a question? Number 4, true or false? The speaker in the poem we've been looking at uses the past tense as he is telling us what happened to him. 5, true or false? The speaker is clearly angry because he uses many exclamations. So guys, I just want you to pause. No longer than 4 minutes on this one, okay? So no longer than 4 minutes. Numbers 1 and 2, yes, you do have to rewrite them to fix, you need to fix number 2. But with the others, it's short answers, so one-word answers. Okay, so I'm going to see you in about 4 minutes to go through the answers. See you soon. Okay, so let's see the answer. Oh, as if by magic. As if by magic. Okay, we will be looking at a variety of poems. So this is a future tense, okay? If it was past tense, we were looking at a variety of poems. Present tense, we are looking at a variety of poems. We will be. So number 1, if you've got the future tense, give it a tick. You got 1 so far. So number 2. Fix the verb tense problem in this sentence. So it said yesterday he is reading a poem. So it's the wrong verb and tense. It was the wrong verb tense agreement. So yesterday he was reading a poem. So we've put it into the past tense. The other way would have been to have changed yesterday. Today he is reading a poem. So you could have fixed it in one of 2 ways. But the key was around this verb. He was, he is. Yesterday he was past. Present tense, today he is. Brilliant. Okay, so what was this one? Take care when writing your answers. So look, it ends in a full stop. So we immediately know cannot be exclamation, cannot be the question. So then we have to decide statement or command. Statement or command. So we see the full stop. So then we have to look at the initial word, the first word in the sentence to decide. Now a command always begins with what type of word? Brilliant. You remember from yesterday, a verb. So take is a verb, to take. So I wanted to use this as an example because sometimes we think commands are like really aggressive, authoritative, angry, rah, rah, rah. But actually, this is just somebody saying, take care when writing your answers. So somebody gently advising, counselling you. So, but that is a command. Give it a tick. How are you doing out of 3 so far? Hopefully 3 for 3. Brilliant. Okay. True or false? The speaker in the poem uses the past tense as he's telling us what happened to him. Well, no, we looked at this yesterday, didn't we? The majority of this poem is written in the present tense to create that sense of urgency and immediacy. Like, this is happening now. This is a problem for now. It's not a problem in the past. It was resolved. This is a problem for people today and now. So that was false. And for number 5, true or false? The speaker is clearly angry because he uses many exclamations. And again, we did see, yes, absolutely, this is a poem that had at least 3 exclamations in that we looked at yesterday, but they weren't just about anger. Can you remember we made that distinction that exclamations can be about heightened emotion? So when our speaker is saying, but hark, and oh, free me, please, it's the desperation, the heightened emotion, something's grabbing his attention. It's not always linked to anger. So brilliant, give yourself a mark out of 5. What a lovely way to start. Okay, so we're getting through this poem in a really detailed, in-depth, ruminating, marinating, taking this poem apart kind of way. And we've done a brilliant job. So we have been looking at how the writer has been using language. So today's lesson is actually shorter because there is a quiz that's also been set through Show My Homework. So there are 2 parts to your work today. Number 1, a quiz. Number 2, this lesson. So you do have to do both. It's not like, oh, I'll do the quiz, I won't do the lesson. Or I'll do the lesson, but I won't do the quiz. We are looking as your teachers for the 2 submissions, 1 quiz, 1 lesson notes, okay? And we are looking at the last couple of areas that the writer is using language to focus us on how this poem is being resolved. So we're going to go straight into our language checkpoint in terms of how this poem is working. And we're going to remind ourselves of what we call a really familiar method. And in this case, we're going to look at alliteration, which is the repetition of the same letter at the start of linked words. Now, it's a bit of a long-winded definition, but that's what alliteration is. It's where we use the same letter at the start of linked words. Now, the first thing about alliteration is their words do not have to be immediately next to each other. We think they have to be immediately next to each other because we're often used to seeing alliteration in advertising, sand, sea, and surf, where the words are immediately next to each other. So there's like a list of words that are linked by alliteration, but actually it can be a little bit more discreet than that. So it's maybe looking at a stanza, so that's a section in a poem. It might be looking at a whole line or a couple of lines and seeing if there's any words that are beginning with the same letter. And that might make you think, alliteration. Okay. And there's the more obvious repetition, work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, which is the use of the same word. So in a minute, I am going to ask you to pause and just write down the alliteration, repetition of the same letter at the start of words, and repetition, the use of some of the same word. But I'd like you just to listen to a few more things about these devices. So the first thing is alliteration and repetition are really easy to spot. It's so easy to spot repetition because, oh, look, that word's used. Oh, look, that word's, oh, look, that, that word's used again. It's again, it's again, it's again. You can spot repetition really easily. The problem with repetition is, okay, and alliteration, they're really easy to spot, but they're also easy to misuse. In other words, we don't really know what to say about them once we found them. So you can be like, oh, scanning through a text. Oh, yep, alliteration. The writers use lots of words beginning with the letter A. But what do I do with that? Oh, look, the writer's repeating the words. Work, sleep, work, sleep. But what do I do with that? So the problem with alliteration and repetition is students like to talk about them a lot because they can spot them. It's quite easy. They feel like an immediate success. Cha-ching, repetition, cha-ching, alliteration, I found them. But we never know what to do with them. So it's like we start strong and we end weak. Oh, the writer throughout this poem has used powerful examples of alliteration. For example, he's repeating the letters. But why is he using them? So we do have to be careful with alliteration and repetition. First of all, we need to decide, has it been used intentionally? Now, intentionally, deliberately means on purpose, okay? If they're going to have value, we have to be able to understand or work out why they've been used. What's the intentionality? What's the purpose of that repetition and that alliteration? And if you can't explain why, other than something very superficial, like to draw attention to words, then you will fail to realize any value. And actually, sometimes it can put exam markers off if you fast forward to GCSE. Now, the other thing about alliteration and repetition, there's accidental examples. You know, there are a lot of high frequency words that end up repeated, like the word and. Now, sometimes and can be a deliberate intentional repetition. Sometimes it's just high frequency, it's just going to happen. And similarly with alliteration, sometimes we will find similar letters being repeated, but not on purpose. It's just almost accidental, it's unintentional. Okay, so it's really important with alliteration and repetition that we think about why are they being used. So both alliteration and repetition are valuable when they are pointing to a really important, significant idea, or they're creating an important link across words. Repetition and alliteration are important when it feels like the writer's going, look at this, think about this. I'm doing this on purpose. It's almost like a little foghorn moment where the voice goes, wah! Pay attention to these words, pay attention to these ideas. So when we think about our poem, it is actually full of alliteration and repetition, but the challenge for us is why. So these were our words from yesterday. So I'm just going to, I went too far. Okay, magic of internet. So we're just going to pause here. We're going to write down alliteration, repetition of the same letter, repetition, the use of the same word. Okay, so just pause so you've got a definition of those key words, and then we're going to look at them in the poem. See you in a minute, guys. Okay, so we're going to just look at them in the poem. Now, these are the lines we've been focused on, the 4 resolution lines, the 4 parts of the poem that bring us to a place of resolution. We've reminded ourselves from previous lessons that what are going on in these lines? Well, one solution to the problem of work is to be set free. Another solution is that somebody takes you away or that you escape work. The resolution actually in this poem is that the speaker is fired. And there is this initial sense that the poem ends with the resolution is the speaker is free. So now I want you to pause, okay? And I want you to think about the examples of repetition and alliteration. So look over at your line. So you're just going to write number 1. Is there any repetition or alliteration in there? Now there's the obvious one, isn't it? So number 1, we're just going to work down repetition of work and sleep. Brilliant. Okay. Now number 2, is there any repetition or alliteration in there? If not, just leave it blank. Number 3, but hark, I see a golden gleam, a saving spirit of hope. You're fired, he screams. Any repetition or alliteration in this one? Now, number 4, so now I'm free, released from all this work, sleep, work, eternal peace and rest for me. Any repetition or alliteration in that? So just press pause, write down 1, 2, 3, and 4, and just record. You can either write down alliteration or repetition, depending on what you see in each. Okay, now we're going to talk through our answers in a couple minutes, but I just want you to have a go for yourself. Can you spot repetition and alliteration? And remember, I've said it's pretty easy sometimes to spot it. It's what we do with it that gets the trickier part. Speak to you in a minute. Okay, so let's have a look. Number 1, oh, free me please with gentle ease from work, sleep, work, sleep, work. Is it repetition? Is it alliteration? Repetition. Look, we've got the use of the same words. Work, sleep, work, sleep. Brilliant. We're going to think about why those words are repeated in a minute. A little clue. What was the word that was being used to describe the pain? The grinding train of, rhythmic pain. This is a repetition of the words work and sleep that's being used to suggest the rhythm of this man's life, the cycle of events in this man's life. And this man or this speaker's life consists of 2 elements, isn't it? And it's the repetition of those words that create the rhythm of his life, that his life is built upon the repetition of work and sleep. Okay, got ahead of myself. Okay, let's look at number 2. Just whisk me off to lands afar. Okay, so yes, it's a solution. He's being taken away to escape, but no repetition or alliteration there. Okay, number 3. What could you see in this one? Did you get it? Yes, brilliant. So we've got 2 examples of alliteration, and they are golden gleam. So for number 3, give yourself a tick if you got golden gleam. Give yourself another tick if you got a saving spirit of hope. So we've got 2 examples of alliteration, golden gleam and saving spirit of hope. Now we've said with alliteration, so what? So what that it's golden gleam? So what that it's saving spirit? Unless we begin to look at, well, what are these words? and what's the link between them? Okay, so he could have just said a light gleam, a bright gleam, but he's deliberately chosen golden gleam. I see a golden gleam. And it's this idea that in this moment, in the stanza of the poem, in the present moment, he sees something golden, something light and bright in front of him. And this gleam, now a gleam is like a shaft of light breaking through. So remember, what's our guy trapped in? This rhythm of work and sleep, and it's hurting his head and he can't make sense of it. Okay, so this golden gleam strengthens then that this light that appears, that this gleam that appears in the weary, painful work sleep rhythm of his life is actually precious. Golden has connotations of being precious. So the golden gleam strengthens that this moment is precious, it's valuable, and it breaks through, this gleam of light breaks through the repetitive pain of work. And that golden gleam just highlights the value of this moment in bringing about change. Okay, and then it's also reinforced, it's compounded by the alliteration of a saving spirit of hope. So actually, this is also a metaphor, but we didn't look at this one. Okay, we didn't look at all of them. I see a golden gleam, a saving spirit of hope. So again, the spirit of hope is a saving spirit. So the alliteration again compounds the importance of this moment. That this resolution, the moment that he's fired, ironically, considering it's a guy screaming at him, you're fired, is for him like this valuable, precious golden glimmer of hope that saves him. And he uses the alliteration to emphasize the importance of that moment. The golden gleam emphasizes the precious value of this light breaking through into his work, sleep life. And this spirit is a saving spirit. So again, he's emphasizing that this is his moment of being saved, of resurrection, of being rescued. Okay, and then it ends though with the repetition, doesn't it? Number 4, work, sleep, work, sleep, work. So sadly, it kind of has this moment of hope, and we think that this poem ends positively, but it's very cleverly done, because even though it ends with the resolution that the speaker's free, we end with a repetition though, or the return of this repetitive work, sleep, which makes us think, has he really escaped? So the repetition reminds us of this rhythm of work sleep that he's trapped in. It almost becomes like the chorus of this poem. So the repetition of work sleep almost becomes like a chorus. Now, guys, with all those ideas, I'm going to ask you to pause, okay, and to complete these sentence stems. So throughout the poem, the writer intentionally repeats the words work, sleep, work, sleep. This adds to the sense of being trapped in a rhythm of a life that consists of only work and sleep, or the pain of work, the boredom of work, the futility of work, the monotony, the tedium. We've got some beautiful vocab to complete this sentence, okay? So in a minute, you're going to pause and complete these sentences. The writer also uses alliteration in the line, golden gleam. The words work together to create an image of, so remember, what did we say? A gleam is like a shaft of light breaking through into the rhythm of work and sleep. Golden, the golden gleam, then, that this light is bright and valuable, and its connotations are something really important because it's golden. Okay, which creates an image of a light breaking through, which is important as it shows that the rhythm of work sleep is being broken. Okay, so you're going to pause and complete those sentences. Okay, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so we're going to look at one last thing, and this is the idea that writers can use some clever creative methods. So alliteration and repetition are methods that we often see, and there are more creative methods that we see less often. And we're going to think about 2 of those, juxtaposition and paradox. Now, juxtaposition is a method where 2 contrasting elements are placed side by side. It's quite a broad term, and it compares and contrasts 2 things. Now, paradox really builds on the idea of juxtaposition, because paradox is a phrase or sentence that uses 2 contrasting ideas. It is a type of juxtaposition, and it reveals a hidden or unexpected truth. Now, if we look at this example of juxtaposition leading into a paradox together, what news to bear this wondrous hangman's rope? Now, if we're going to think about juxtaposition and paradox, we need to look at two things that are next to each other or close, decide whether they're similar or different. Once we work out that they're different, we're going to see, well, are they revealing an unexpected truth? Or are they just drawing attention? If they're just drawing attention to something that's juxtaposition, if it's an unexpected truth, it's a paradox. So, what news to bear this wondrous hangman's rope? So we've got the lovely exclamatory again. It is metaphorical because really he's referring to being fired as a wondrous hangman's rope. It's quite a dark, macabre image, and we'll look at why. So the first thing is wondrous means something marvellous, something delightful. It's a positive word choice. It's a word choice that has connotations of goodness. It's marvellous. It's delightful. Hangman rope, on the other side, hangman's rope is actually an object used for execution. It's a moment of punishment by death, where in the olden days people would be hung. And the hangman's rope, we might hear the word noose. So we've got this lovely moment where something, this hangman's rope, this object of execution, this punishment by death is being described as marvellous and delightful. And it begs the question, well, how can such a thing, how can execution, how can being hung be a wonderful thing? So what, from our writer's point of view, is the hidden or unexpected truth he's revealing here? And that's what makes this a paradox. Because actually he's saying that when he gets fired, he uses the metaphor that it's like a hangman's rope and it's a wondrous moment. So what's so marvellous and delightful about this guy getting fired? That's going to be our hidden or unexpected truth. So let's look at this one together then. The writer reveals a hidden unexpected truth that they would rather be than blank. So what does the hangman's rope have connotations for? Okay, that they would rather be dead, they would rather be executed, they would rather be fired than good, then go on working. So the unexpected truth here is that this person's quite desperate, okay? If living means having to continue in this painful rhythm of work and sleep, our writer, the speaker of this poem, would rather be set free from that, released from it, even if release is as extreme as being fired or being executed. So this is why it's a paradox, because none of us would think, do you know what? This is what I would choose for myself. I would choose execution. I would choose punishment. But for the speaker in the poem, work has become such a trap, such a odious, tedious enterprise, such a grinding train of rhythmic pain that he believes that this is his only way out. So the hidden or unexpected truth he reveals is he feels that the only way to escape the pain of work is to be executed, to be let go of, to be let fired. Okay, so what I want you to do there, we're just going to pause. We're going to write down. The writer can use some clever creative methods. Juxtaposition is paradox, such as juxtaposition and paradox. And then we're just going to do this sentence here. The writer reveals a hidden unexpected truth that they would rather be fired, executed, than go on working, particularly if living means having to endure the trap and the pain of work. Okay, brilliant. So just get that written down for me. Okay, so what I just want to say, so how is the highlighted line a paradox? Well, we've just started to talk, we've just looked at the hangman's rope, so we're going to apply it now to a new line. So how is this a paradox? Okay, so remember, what are the two contrasting ideas? So we're going to start by thinking, well, what's the positive idea in number 3? What's the negative idea? Then we're going to think about the truth that it reveals. Okay, so we're going to do this one together because the paradox, we've come to this at the end because it's the hardest idea, but it's a really grown-up, mature, deep way of reading language, this paradox. So, but hark, I see a golden gleam, a saving spirit of hope. And actually, they're using the colon to help us see the positive and the negative, to create a moment's pause between the paradoxical elements, the good and the bad, so that we can see them and understand them. So here's all the good stuff on this side of the colon, isn't it? I see a golden gleam, a saving spirit of hope. So in this life of rhythmic pain and the torture of work, he suddenly gets a shining light, a golden gleam of hope. So that's the positive, that into his life comes a moment of hope. But why is it a paradox? Because his hope is really attached to, did you get it? What's negative about this next bit? You're fired, he screams. Where's the negativity coming there? Good. It's coming at the anger of the scream. It's coming through the idea that he's actually been fired. So we could get trapped with paradoxes just writing like this. In this stanza, the writer creates a paradox between something positive and something negative. So actually, that's really what juxtaposition paradox is. Can I see, is there a good and a bad? Two opposite ideas coming together. If we write, the writer creates a paradox between something positive and negative, we're kind of being a bit superficial. We're staying at the surface level. We want to go deep. Okay, so how do we do that? Right, so we have to talk about the two moments. Okay, so in this stanza, the writer creates a paradox between the idea of blank, which is, okay, so we want to unpack positive and negative. So in this stanza, the writer creates a paradox between the idea of something hopeful and good, or the idea of a golden gleam, the idea of a spirit of hope, which is positive because, sorry guys, you can see I've missed the line there, and the moment when the speaker is fired. So actually with this paradox, we're creating a key kind of idea. Okay, guys, I just wanted to quickly change that for us, okay? So it was reading as it should. So in this stanza, the writer creates a paradox between the idea of a golden gleam, which is positive because, and the moment when the speaker is fired. Brilliant. So that's how we're beginning to unpack and say more than positive and negative. For most people, the idea of being fired would be because. So why would that be the negative part of this image? Why is that the bit we would fear or that we would be afraid of? And yet for the speaker, it reveals an unexpected truth that being fired for them is good because it releases them from the pain of work. It releases them from the trap. So I'm not going to lie, this last bit, this is harder. This is what we might talk about at GCSE. This would distinguish the really high grades, because talking about paradox and the idea of contrasting two ideas is quite a mature, deep way of thinking. So let's just talk about that one last time together. If you're happy with what you're doing, you can pause me, you can write your sentences, you can ignore me. If you'd like us to go through it once more, just stay with me. So in this stanza, so we're referring to a section in the poem, the writer creates a paradox between the idea of a golden gleam, or you could go for a saving spirit of hope, which is, so now we're going to just explain why that's a positive image, why that's a good idea, which is a positive image, or which is an encouraging image, or which is a hopeful image, because the idea of hope coming into a situation breaks him out of the trap of work, and the moment when the speaker is fired. Okay, for most people, the idea of being fired would be negative, would be upsetting, would be stressful, because most people know that they need to work to earn money, being employed is important. And yet for the speaker, it reveals an unexpected truth that being fired is good because, so let's look at some of our what's up here. So we could say that being fired is good because it offers them an escape. It sets them free from the problem of work. It resolves their problem with work. It takes them out of the painful rhythmic trap. Okay, so you're going to just pause on that one. And once that's done, we've got one last thing, and that's just done. And then it'll be over to your quiz. So we've done this poem. So just because when we start looking next week at the second poem, we need to be able to remember this. I just want you to real quick, these are 3 real quick thoughts. So in my opinion, the poem is trying to teach us. So what's the problem it's trying to draw attention to? What's it trying to teach us in this poem, do you think? So in my opinion, the poem is trying to teach us that work has become a trap, that somehow we are out of balance in terms of our relationship to work. And the outcome of that problem, so actually we could keep it simple. In my opinion, the poem is trying to teach us that our relationship to work, the way we work, is a problem. The outcome is that we can only be freed by being fired, but we might never really escape, which teaches us. So this isn't necessarily a happy ending poem. This isn't teaching us that everything works out well in the end. It's kind of teaching us, it's like a cautionary tale, isn't it? It's teaching us to guard the way we work, to guard our lives, to guard where we spend our time. So, in my opinion, the poem is trying to teach us that work is a problem. The outcome is that we cannot free ourselves, that our own real freedom comes from maybe being fired or somebody helping us to escape the trap of work, which in turn teaches us that this problem is not easy to solve, or which teaches us that we cannot pretend this problem doesn't exist, or which teaches us that we cannot ignore the problem. Now, if I was getting really kind of like existential at the end of this lesson, which teaches us that we've got a really unhealthy relationship to work in modern society, which teaches us that modern society has made work a trap that people cannot escape, because we believe that we have to pay bills, that we have to buy things, that we have to buy into materialism. We could take that idea big, or we could keep it small. How do we keep it small? In my opinion, the poem is trying to teach us that work is a problem. The outcome is being fired offers an escape or a release, which teaches us that actually it's a very difficult problem to solve for ourselves. And now we've got a lovely summary. So, lovely people, you do have a 10-question quiz on Show My Homework as well. Real short, sharp and snappy. I'm trying Show My Homework quizzes this week because not everybody was accessing forms, and I wasn't getting, didn't feel like enough were responding on forms. So I'm just seeing if this gets more of a response. Okay, lovely people, see you next week.